Hi guys, welcome to this week's video. This week we're going to hear a story about a really brave queen that lived years and years and years ago. Now this queen started with nothing. She's not like some other queens where they're in the royal family. Her people were Jewish. And at this point in history, the Jews had been kicked out of their country, so they didn't really have any proper homes or anything like that, and were being made to live in a country called Persia. And Esther was one of these people. But not only had her people been kicked out, but Esther's parents had also died. So she was an orphan who was made to grow up with her cousin and didn't really have a proper home. So it doesn't sound like a great story at the moment. But when Esther grew up, when she was a bit older, the king decided he wanted to try and find somebody to marry. So he went out looking and bumped into Esther and decided that Esther would be his queen, not knowing where she was from properly, not knowing she was Jewish or anything like that. And Esther became queen later on. And Esther did all the things she should do as queen and went to all the balls and banquets and stuff that the king asked her to go to. But the king had this right-hand man, and his name was called Haman. And Haman was one of the most powerful people in the kingdom. Only the king was more powerful. And Haman saw himself as above everyone else and more important, so expected people to bow down to him. And one day, he was out walking around and then saw and bumped into a guy called Mordecai. Now Mordecai didn't know Haman, Haman didn't know Mordecai, but Mordecai was Esther's cousin. And Mordecai didn't bow down to Haman because Haman wasn't God. Mordecai would only bow down to God. And this really annoyed Haman. So much so, he went away and started plotting how to get rid of Mordecai. And after some thinking, he decided, it's not worth it just getting rid of Mordecai. Let's get rid of all his people. Let's show people a lesson not to mess with me. So, Haman went away and wrote this law that said all Jews are going to be rounded up and put to death. And then he put it in front of the king and convinced the king it was for the best interest of the country that this happened. The king, seeing Haman as his most trusted advisor, agreed that if Haman's recommending it, it must be good. So he signed it, and then everyone found out, and everyone was worried. Now nobody knew Esther was Jewish at this point, and she hadn't really heard of this law being in the palace. So her cousin Mordecai, who we met earlier in the story, sent a messenger to Esther to let her know about everything going on, and asked that she use her position with the king to get a pardon, to save her people from being killed. Esther was a bit cautious to start with, because back then, even the queen wasn't allowed to speak to the king unless granted permission. She couldn't just go up and start chatting to him or walk into the same room as him without being asked. And if she did, he had to pardon her straight away, otherwise she would be beheaded. So she had real tough time with it. And then after a bit of backwards and forwards with Mordecai, she realised that perhaps God had put her in this position as queen for such a time as this. Meaning she saw and realised, perhaps I'm queen not just to have a lavish life, not just because I was in the right place at the right time, but because God wanted her there to save his people. So, the following day, she went in to see the king. The king instantly pardoned her, without even thinking, which was good. It meant she could live. And she invited him and Haman to a meal. She said she'd been preparing it all day and would love the company at this amazing meal. And at the meal, the king asked, "What do you want?" I'll give you anything up to 50% of the kingdom. And Esther said again, well, just come to my banquet tomorrow. It'll be even bigger and better. So the king and Haman decided to go with her to this banquet and had a really great time. And at this second banquet, Esther got asked by the king again, what do you want? I will give you up to 50% of the kingdom. And Esther turned to the king and said, can you save my people? They're being persecuted, they're being rounded up, and they're going to be killed. When the king heard this, he was shocked and horrified that somebody could do such a thing to a group of people. Then the king asked, who's doing this to you? Why is it happening? And Esther turned and pointed straight at Haman and said, he's doing this to me. He's asked you and got you to round up all the Jews so that they can be killed. Well, I'm Jewish. Can you save my people? And at that moment, the king realized what had happened and went against his first orders and let the Jews live happily and live freely. In this story, you can see that Esther didn't realize why she was queen properly, but then she realized that actually she had a job to do to help her people. So that's the story for this week, guys. It'd be really great to see you on Sunday in our Zoom call. And this Sunday is going to be a little bit different because it's Remembrance Sunday. We're going to have a bit to do with the story and a bit to do with Remembrance Sunday. It would be really great to see you there. And there's also going to be some crafts, some games, and just chat. So if you want to join, email us, we'll give you the link, and there's also some craft supplies that you're going to need down in the description so you can do the crafts with us. See you next week with our next story. Bye!